back. WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. It was a partially positive weekend for the Orioles. Our wise conversations continue as we welcome Luke Jones back in to talk all things Orioles baseball here. I don't want to say quiet on the Orioles front here, Luke, but when they disappear and go out of town and the game time changes a little bit and they move the MASN too. But the Dallas thing, full stadium, people, it's like there's no plague going on. And, maybe not going to be as bad as 110 losses or whatever, but it's going to be a choppy endeavor. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think even the best case scenarios, you're looking at a team that's still going to have significant struggles. They're still going to have 1-6 homestands like they did over their first homestand of the season. And then in a fairly similar place as they are, a team that's rebuilding, a team that doesn't have a whole lot going for it in the short term. And that was the Texas Rangers. And the Orioles took 2 of 3 and they gave up 4 runs over 3 days. And you saw a pretty good outing from Dean Kramer, who was pretty awful his first couple of times out. And then John Means went to the Hill on Sunday, chance to sweep. Well, they didn't get the job done, but it wasn't because of him. He was brilliant. So as much as I constantly say to you, you're looking for those individual success stories when you're talking about a team that is going to lose anywhere from 95 to 105 games, most likely, depending on where you are. I don't know if 95 losses is optimistic, but it's not as pessimistic as other people talking about this club. But you're looking for those individual success stories. And on the pitching side, you got quite a few of them over the weekend. The starters and the bullpen for that matter. So they didn't swing the bats particularly well, even on Saturday when they exploded with some runs late. It wasn't until the 8th inning. So it was overall, I think you give it a thumbs up, but definitely with what transpired in the 10th inning on Sunday, it's a scoreless game. And Maikel Franco is on third base and gets thrown at the plate on a single to right field. Well, clearly something didn't go right there. And not to make excuses for it, because Maikel Franco's a guy who's been in the major leagues for quite a while. It's a bad baseball play, but it was a weird play. And you can point to the previous 9 innings and say, you got to back up your ace a little bit better than the Orioles did on Sunday, because John Means was just fantastic. So, again, I think you look at the weekend and you take away much more positive than negative. And you try to figure out why the Orioles have actually played okay baseball away from Camden Yards. And well, as I mentioned, coming off of a 1-6 homestand. So I don't know if there's a whole lot to that, but it is what it is. But they take away 2 of 3 from the Rangers.
I want to give a little love to my my pal Evan Brown over at State Fair and El Guapo. I'm wearing my El Guapo shirt here. So I'm getting my green screen out before the weekend's over here. And the Orioles are out of town, and you sort of fly away a little bit here. And the Rangers, to see what is going on in other places, right? Like you talk about these rebuilds and they tear this thing down here and they had to do it. And it was 20 years, long time coming and all that. But it feels like on this beauty tour, we're going to go around and see a lot of places where they're rebuilding and doing things. And not that long ago, we're doing well in the Pittsburghs and the Torontos and other places where they were, for a minute, a playoff team. And, this minute is for San Diego and LA, who had a big series over the weekend, and everybody was focused on that. At least there is on my timeline some level of focus on how bad the Yankees have been, how good the Red Sox have been, that it's a baseball season. It's 3 weeks into a baseball season where a lot of things are happening around the sport right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and I think most people anticipated that. I mean, yeah, there have been some COVID issues around the league, and there will continue to be some here and there. But as the vaccines continue to roll out, and based on what we saw last year, which, okay, there were a couple massive outbreaks earlier on with the Marlins, with St. Louis, I guess it was, but things stabilized a little bit more. I think guys kind of settle into what the expectations are, and you're able to play. So I fully expect the same thing to occur this year. I expect to see fewer COVID issues and more normal baseball. Now, I think it's interesting, and speaking about the Yankees, of course they've struggled, and New York's already going nuts. I mean, we're 2.5 weeks into the season, and people were pressing the panic button in the Bronx, which is kind of what you get with the Yankees anytime they're not in first or second place. But I think for me, it's just going to be interesting to see how this season plays out from a pitching standpoint. We've talked about it a lot with the Orioles specifically, but all these teams are going from 60 games, which was a sprint, which was a case where you could probably be more aggressive as a manager in terms of knowing you're doing it for 2 months and you're trying to make the playoffs and it's an expanded field. Now you're back to a normal baseball season. I've wondered all off season what that's going to look like on the pitching side. So I don't know if there's anything we can dramatically conclude based on what we've seen in the first 2.5 weeks, but it's just one of those things that I think is going to be really interesting to track. And I was talking with a friend over the weekend about this. Just looking at Brandon Hyde and how he's handled some of the starting pitchers. We've seen Matt Harvey pulled with 2 outs in the 5th inning in a couple outings where he pitched well. And from a traditional standpoint, you'd say, well, you don't want to let him get through 5. But that's kind of something we're seeing in baseball throughout. We saw this with the Rays in the postseason last year, pulling starting pitchers a little bit sooner. Now, there's certainly an analytical element to that with third time through the order and familiarity with the lineup and elements like that. But I also wonder if we're going to see a little bit more of that in terms of innings management, in terms of trying to keep pitchers out of harm's way, not just on the scoreboard, but from a physical standpoint. So, with a team like the Orioles, probably not the best case study in terms of really gauging that. But as we get into, a little bit deeper into the season, I am going to be curious to see what the innings look like per start for starters. Are we seeing more relievers go multiple innings? A guy that might have been a 1-inning guy, maybe they're asking them to get 4 or 5 outs. So, I just think that's something that's going to be really interesting to track. But going back to your original point, yeah, it's felt like a baseball season. That Padres Dodger season, or series, which I didn't get to watch from first inning through 9th inning, but catching some action on MLB Network late at night and seeing some of the scuffles and some of the bad blood and just sheer talent on both sides. That's fun. That as far as 2021, that's as close as it feels to Yankees Red Sox until the Yankees Red Sox look like Yankees Red Sox. So it's fun, and I think it's been a fine start to the baseball season. We saw a no hitter last week. We've seen a couple no hitters and great pitching performances. Aaron Nola had a complete game shutout on Sunday. So we've seen some fun things so far this year, even if not necessarily a ton of fun things here in Baltimore with the Orioles. Series win over the weekend notwithstanding.
Did you say complete game shutout? They
Yeah.
still have those.
They still happen. Not as often, but they still happen. So, the Orioles have got some
almost like a no-hitter.
Yeah.
It's shocking you don't get pulled out in the 6th inning of a no-hitter these days, right? Because you hit the pitch count at 92. That's enough for you today, right?
Yeah. And again, we've gone into some of the issues there. Certainly teams are trying to protect financial investments. I just mentioned that going from a short season to a long season, but a lot of this goes back to max effort, and you look how hard guys are throwing now. It's the days Jim Palmer's talked about this. Pitchers back then paced themselves. You don't see that anymore. These guys, starting pitchers are going just about max effort from pitch 1 to 85 or 90 or 95, or maybe they get to 100 and they're taken out, and it's just a different dynamic. Why? Because then you have 6 or 7 arms in the bullpen of guys throwing 95 plus out there. So it's become a very different game in that way. And I understand purists aren't going to like seeing that from just an aesthetic standpoint, but you just look at it. It's
not even
it's
about
a very
purist at this point. It's about literally, and I've talked a lot with guys my age. I had Rob Nyer on last week.
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting Keith Law. I'm getting, I'm going to find Craig Calcaterra. I'm going to go talk baseball with people. But it's a part where someone like me, who's already veering away from it because of finances, because of asses that run the team, because the team stinks, because I've been personally mistreated, I've watched other people get mistreated. Then there just goes back to, all right, it's a new season. I'm a new guy. It's a new plague. I got a shot. I want something to do. I want to go out. I want to be engaged. I put it on. I'll just say this about the pitching, and this is just me a week and a half into this. I'm more concerned with this team not having any real hitters. I mean, Mountcastle once and again, and Mancini. I think they'll deal him. I mean, I just think there'll be a point where they'll get what they need to get, and they hope all these Matt Harveys, all these 3-month projects to be dealt, right? I would just say this on the pitching. They're carrying 14 pitchers, right? I mean, for the most part, everybody, it's industry wide. And then a kid goes out and finally gives him a start, and then they sort of banish him to make roster moves in that old Buck Showalter, like almost like you're really competing instead of your last place team. And I get that it's April, but how much pitching do they need? And then when they see all of this pitching, and I see a roster full of Jose Iglesias types, you know what I mean? For the most part, I, I mean, no one hits, right? I mean, it's really become a thing where the analytics side is if I always have a fresh arm that throws 95 and I go right, and I'm throwing different, and nobody really gets a look at anybody because nobody's going 7 innings except for Nola, right? Then the whole premise of the game changes. And I think the premise of roster management and all the things that Buck and Dan did with pitchers and hiding guys out in Norfolk and stowing them away over at the Sheridan and bringing them up and doing all those kinds of things, I'm seeing the Orioles do that early in the season. And I don't know that they have roster management right to make the sport compelling. Like we always argue 53 and 45 up in football, and basketball, only 8 or 9 guys even play, so it doesn't matter who's 11, 12 and 13. They're just there to wave a towel. But when you want to manage a roster this way, and they've taken away lefty, one off, so they've taken away a little bit of the roster management, but it feels like you look down and there's only a catcher and a guy you don't want to give a glove left on your bench in the 6th inning. There's no pinch. All of these specialty things that the game would be better if they carried 32 guys. And I know they don't want to hear that because that's player association. It goes all into that muck that we will get into because we're the smart, we're the intelligent, we're the wise ones around here, talking about how it really works and how management and labor are going to go at each other next year. But man, it's not as good as it could be, Luke. You love baseball, and I look at it just from 50,000 feet. I've been watching baseball my whole life, and I mean, the Blue Jays brought back these good-looking uniforms and stuff. Like some things about it, some of the pizzazz is still there, including Padres, Dodgers, and they still have a very good game. Baseball been very, very good to me. I like baseball. But I put it on certain nights and I don't recognize it as baseball in the same way that Jim Palmer doesn't recognize it, And Ben McDonald is very good at this, by the way. I really enjoyed spending time. I don't really like. I think Garceau's lousy and disinterested and old and over the hill. And I think this other guy just sort of roots for the team. I'm just trying to get used to a different. I'm not longing for Gary Thorne or John Miller. I'm just trying to say I'm spending every night with it. My wife is home now. She's going to be subjected to it. I just want it to be, I want to learn. And Ben's good. I mean, I'll tip my cap to Ben.
Yeah, I think Ben McDonald's done a good job. I thought that last year, in the midst of this weird season where you don't have Jim Palmer, you don't have Gary Thorne, Ben McDonald was a bright spot in that way. But going back to what you mentioned, I think,
and he's like sort of efforting me through it a little bit. You know what I mean? Like he's explaining stuff like he's got a child and he's a good parent.
Sure.
Like literally. And that's where I want to be with baseball because I don't know most of these players. I don't care to know most of them. I just have it on, hoping for something entertaining to happen. And that's not going to be on the field so much this year. I mean, it just really isn't. I mean,
well, it is, but you have to know where to look. You have to. John Means was very entertaining on Sunday. He pitched like an ace, and I think now a couple years into this thing, this guy's a legitimate major league starting pitcher, and I don't know if he's a legitimate number 1, but I think he's better than a legitimate number 5. I think he's shown that. The Orioles are going
to legitimately give him $100 million anytime soon. So they're legitimately going to deal him for whatever they can get, or like that's how we're looking at it now. It's almost like looking at a AAA team, like literally, where's this guy going to go and what bag of baseballs are we going to get?
Well, no, it's not a bag of baseballs. That you have to understand where they're coming from. I mean, you wanted them to rebuild a few years ago too, so you have to understand what this entails. I mean, deal Manny Machado a year and a half before they did, because they would have gotten a lot more for him. And whoever they would have gotten would have been farther along in their development than some of the guys they got. And, we can break down each trade that they made, and many of them weren't very good, in the same way that you look at the fire sale back in 20 years ago.
A guy who's about to get fired be a part of rebuilding
sure.
it, and Brady Anderson's in on it. Long gone. So I can sit here again. I can bitch about all the past stuff. That's what's led to this point.
Sure.
Now we're at this point, and the game's on television, and they didn't put any of the games on last month, and now I'm trying to dive back into. And you've been down there. People can come. Nobody's coming to the games, even though they can come to the games. So just rolling out the baseball is not good enough. They're going to need more than my tip of the cap to Ben McDonald. They're trying to get people back, and part of getting them back is engaging them in the soap opera. And Lord knows my livelihood is dependent on it. I'm really trying to figure it out, and I'm 2 weeks into it, and I've been watching, and I'm just opining on what I see, which is the game's not very good right now. Across the board, I don't think the game's very good right now.
Well, we can keep having the same discussion. We have this discussion every week. I don't know what to tell you. I agree with certain elements. I think certain elements of the game are way better than you're giving it credit for. I think this game has some of the greatest young talent that we've seen in a long time. When you talk about Juan Soto, when you talk about Ronald Acuna, when you talk about Tatis out in San Diego, teaming up with Manny Machado on the left side of the infield. I think there's a lot of great young talent in this game. Sure. So, I hear elements of what you say, but I don't agree with that the game is completely terrible either. I think there's certainly things that need to be improved upon, things that they need to look at. I'm really interested and intrigued to see what happens with the Atlantic League with moving the mound back, which is something I've mentioned to you. I think that's a difficult proposition, but I feel if you want something that's really going to move the meter, rather than just arbitrarily shortening the game to 7 innings, as we've seen with the doubleheaders.
By the way, I was a guy that always thought the basketball rim should have gotten moved up. Yeah, everybody could dunk.
Sure.
And now Steph Curry comes along, right, and completely revolutionizes the way people shoot, right? So, to your point, if it's not about the game being better, and I'm not trying to be an old man on my lawn. They've got 400 guys in the sport now that throw 95 miles an hour. Everybody's Nolan Ryan.
Right.
So they've got that should allegedly make it better, except chicks like the long ball. Nobody likes long counts, long walks, long games, no outcomes, no hit and run, no stolen. There's just so many parts of the game that I am, as an old guy, trying to get my arms around, so when they ever become any good again, I recognize the game. Because it's almost like they're playing Canadian football all of a sudden. It's a different kind of game. It really, at every way, the way you think about it as a manager, and 7-inning games last Monday night or Tuesday night, whatever it was, and I'm sitting there in the 5th inning thinking, oh, the game's almost over. Like, we got 2 more outs here. So every part of this, every night, I'm seeing it and saying, I don't recognize it. Now, I don't want to be an ass and just hate it because it's different. Let me peel back the onion. Maybe there's something in here that I'm going to like more 5 years from now when I'm old and I don't want to golf. I've at least figured that much out.
Yeah, and again, I don't know how to sell you on the game if you're just not into it. Like I've said, the talent level is. I don't think. Is it different? Yeah. Do I think it's a totally different sport? Not really. I don't know, man. I feel like every week we have the same discussion, and you're asking me to defend why I like baseball. I don't view it in that lens. It's like I feel like it would be me asking you why you like hockey, because I just don't like hockey. Like, I don't think it's a terrible sport. I'm just not interested in it. But I don't know how that, how that discussion changes. If people aren't interested in baseball anymore, I don't know specifically how to sell you on that if you just don't like baseball, period. I certainly agree that there needs to be more action. I think balls being put. Yeah, I certainly agree there needs to be more balls put in play. I don't think the issue is a pitch clock necessarily. I don't think the issue is shortening it to 7 innings, because you're still having the issue of, over those 7 innings, yeah, it's going to be shorter, but you're still not going to have enough balls put in play. I mentioned the mound being moved back. I do think, going back to you asked me about rosters. I think something that you've heard some analytic-minded analysts out there, whether you're talking about, Joe Sheehan or as you mentioned, Rob Nyer, Keith Law, and I don't want to put words in their mouth, but I know those types have suggested potentially limiting the number of pitchers on the roster with the thought of you don't allow them to be max effort the way that they're doing this. You have 10 pitchers on the roster as opposed to where the Orioles are right now with 14. And you only can have 10, so guys have to pace themselves a little more. You have to expect your starters to go a little bit longer. Now, that's not always going to work out, and I'm not saying that's definitely going to happen, but if you have that, then on the flip side, you're talking about having more bench players. To your point, only having a couple options. I think another thing the Atlantic League's doing, which keep in mind, this is the league that's independent from, they're not affiliated, but they have a partnership with Major League Baseball. I think the other thing they're doing that's interesting is tying the designated hitter to the starting pitcher. And what I mean by that is you have a DH, but when the starting pitcher is lifted, the DH goes bye-bye. So it's almost the flip side of what we've seen in National League Baseball in recent years, where, you get to the 5th inning and, okay, your starter's thrown 83 pitches, but it's the 5th inning. There's 2 guys on with 2 outs. You're down by a run. Managers have had to make that decision. Okay, we have a scoring opportunity here. If I send my pitcher up there, okay, yeah, there's that rare chance that you'll get a Madison Bumgarner situation and he'll get a hit, but most likely we know what's going to happen. You're sending a 115 hitter up to the plate, and he's not going to get the runs in, and we're going to miss his scoring opportunity. But on the flip side, he's going to give me 3 or 4 more outs if things go well. So you're always weighing that. With this, what the Atlantic League's doing, and again, I'm not saying I like it or dislike it. I'm just presenting what the thought process. Now you're looking at it from the opposite lens, where you're saying you have your starting pitcher. We know about 3rd time through the order penalty. We know about how bullpens, how pitching staffs, how managers operate in today's game. Do you want to pull your starter now? And now you're playing National League style baseball the rest of the game because your DH is gone, and you're either going to need to have a deeper bench to pinch hit for relievers, or are you pushing your starter a little bit longer? So I think it's an interesting idea. Again, I don't know if I like it or not, and we'll see how it plays out there. And it's not like people are going to be watching it closely, but Major League Baseball is watching it closely. So I like the fact, and you and I have talked about some of these rules, whether we're talking about the ghost runner being placed at second base in extra innings or 7-inning doubleheaders, and there are very strong opinions one way or the other on those things. But I at least like the fact that baseball is attempting some things different. I mean, we've talked about this and we talk about it every week. You don't find the product particularly good these days, and that's fine. You're not alone in that. But baseball trying to make some changes like this, whether you like it or whether you're not, it's at least an effort, at least a recognition to say, we realize some things are amiss here and we do want to make our game better. So how do you juggle doing that while also maintaining the game itself and not turning it into something that's completely different? And I think that's the challenge. And that was probably the challenge when the NBA added the 3-point shot way back when. That was the challenge when, legal defense and they let you play zone again. I mean, look at the progression we've seen in the NFL. I mean, one thing I've seen some people opine and say baseball's so they'll push back on change, and people even saying, oh, we don't want to see the game change. Look at these other sports. We've seen drastic changes in the NFL. Look at how all the rules over the last 25 years have pandered toward offense and defense becoming that much more difficult to play. So you always have these changes in the game.
And more people are watching football than have ever watched, right?
Sure.
And less people are watching baseball than have ever watched. And
sure.
They're attempting to do things, and I think a lot of it's dumb. I mean, putting a guy on second base just is dumb. It's just something that I swear we wouldn't have done in my little league at Berkshire. So, I mean, it just doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't appeal to me. And I'm going to say something that's really going to be probably the jerkiest thing I've ever said about baseball in 30 years of radio. It's my 30th anniversary. This will make me a real jerk. It was much more interesting when they were all shooting up. You know what I mean? Like literally when they were all had bags of drugs and they were all sticking needles in themselves and hitting home runs and mouthing off to each other and hitting 70 home. It was more interesting. Now, that being said, America was probably more interesting to Russia when the orange guy was running it. It's like, so what's more interesting and what's more good and what sells more tickets and what's more healthy and what's better and for them, for the baseball people, what's better is what costs them less money. So part of the pitching, part of this philosophical thing is to make sure we don't have too many guys doing complete game shutouts, because we have to pay those guys $35 million a guy. The relievers and the firemen in the ninth inning, that got out of hand when B.J. Ryan's getting $60 million deals and all that kind of thing. So I think part of it is executive, and that silo and the baseball silo, and then there's the part with like what the fans might want, and then there's what the sponsors demand, and what the television networks, man, they're serving a lot of masters. They really, really are, Luke. And I think that's obvious that when a guy standing on second base in the 10th inning, I'm thinking, who came up with that? Like, whose idea was that? And what room of people said, well, that's a great idea. Well, why is it a great idea? Well, arrest bullpens. Well, doesn't really give us an outcome. 7-inning doubleheaders. Like, who came up with that? Baseball people, pitching people trying to save pitching, owners trying to save pitchers. I don't know the philosophical thing. I just know it's been dropped in, and I sit here and I watch it and I'm like, who came up with it? Why was it a good idea? And explain it to me like I'm a kindergartner as to why this is going on right now and why I should, as a fan, a 52-year-old fan, check off. I understood the DH, back in the days because pitchers couldn't hit. It made sense to me. And then the National League, the old, grab their nuts and spit tobacco, and National League, well, that's a real man's a pitcher. He's a role player. He's going to hit. And then there's strategy and the strategies. So I heard those arguments for 25 years. All of these goofy things that they're doing, I don't really understand philosophically how it makes it better for me, the guy at home watching that's the part that's kind of lost on me. What are you doing to make it better for me as a fan and as a guy who's loved the game?
Can I ask you this? Because
sure.
What would you do? Because we have this, our Orioles conversations are becoming this every week.
In the 10th inning. Why? What is there?
Why does college football overtime start at the 25-yard line and not just play regular overtime?
And decided.
Well,
to get the game over.
I mean,
is that the reason? Tell me. Ask me. I mean, I don't know. I really don't know.
Well, you got to remember a couple of these changes were put in place because, as you like to remind everyone, this was done in the midst of a pandemic. And part of the 7-inning doubleheaders was because they knew they were going to have a lot of postponements last year. And, we've seen that this year, not a ton, but we've seen some with some teams having some cases. So a lot of that was done with, well, we're going to have postponements. It was a 60-game season and we need to get these games in. But at the same time, we also recognized a lot of doubleheaders do put a massive strain on a bullpen. So, and minor league doubleheaders have been 7-inning games for years. I mean, that's nothing new. That's been done in the minor leagues for a long time. I'm not saying whether I like that a whole lot or not, but that was the rationale behind that. The rule, as far as the runner being placed on second base, that was something that, the minor leagues that had been brought up a few years ago, so they're trying to avoid having very long games in that way. I do think the runner on second base is a very polarizing idea. I kind of liked it last year just because, hey, this is a weird season anyway. Let's try some different things. I don't know if I love it, but I have friends who really, really like that a lot because it does involve some strategy of bunting a guy over to third, a sac fly. Some of the things
the fact that they got 2 guys on the bench too. I mean, they don't have any players to bat. Situationally, the situational baseball is gone at that point because you have to bat who you bat. So all of these things lead into this tunnel to get the game over with. And I think that that's what they want to do. They want to get the game over with.
Well, because they've heard people complain about how long the games are. I mean, we talk about time. That's why I almost roll my eyes at the time of game argument now, as much more that it's about the action within the game. How many? I mean, I can think back to games back in the '90s. I mean, the Orioles and the Yankees. What was it? '96. They play at that point in time. They had played the longest 9-inning game by time in Major League history. I think it was 96, 97, whatever it was. But we're talking 20, 25 years ago almost, and it was a high scoring game. And I guarantee you, everyone who was there that night, because it was such a high scoring game, they weren't sweating the fact that it went over.
Game, by the way, I remember.
Yeah, I mean, they weren't sweating that. I mean, even look at Sunday. The Orioles played a 1-0 game with the Rangers, but it wasn't a game where there were 13 walks combined. I mean, it was especially the first 7 or 8 innings went really fast. I don't think anyone was saying, "Oh, that's a terrible baseball game." It was a kind of a traditional pitcher's duel between John Means and Kyle Gibson. So I think, again, it's not, for me, it's not the length of the game. It's what's happening within that time period. That's why I don't think a 7-inning game fixes the issue, because you're still talking about 3 true outcomes: home runs, strikeouts, walks. I mean, that's really the problem. So again, you have to do this from a standpoint of not just looking at it in terms of time of game, what's happening within that game. And the problem is, because the pitching is, from a raw talent standpoint, a raw velocity, movement of breaking balls, spin rate, it's better than it's ever been. On the flip side, the hitters are having to adjust to that. I mean, think about how Cal Ripken had to prepare, or Eddie Murray had to prepare to face Nolan Ryan. On the rare occasions, a couple times a year, you'd face someone like that who's throwing 100 miles per hour, even though we didn't have radar guns as sophisticated as we do today. Now every team's got at least a couple guys who throw that hard. I mean, it's absurd. And some teams have multiple guys. Some teams have 4 or 5 guys that are throwing in the high 90s or better. So you have that in the bullpen. You have starters who throw hard. So these hitters, as much as we talk about, just make contact and go the other way and bunt and all those different things, which there's still an argument for those. I'm not being completely dismissive of that. My point is, it's a really different game today in that way than it was even 20 years ago. So when you're struggling to make contact against guys that are throwing that hard and have that ridiculous movement, and you follow Pitching Ninja on Twitter and you see the way they funnel these pitches. I mean, guys are throwing a fastball and some kind of cutter or breaking ball that comes out of the hand looking exactly the same for the first, 10, 15 feet that it leaves the pitcher's hand. You're guessing. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. I'm not making excuses. It's that difficult. So from that standpoint, if it's that difficult to do and you're going to struggle to make contact, and you have shifts and position, defenses positioned knowing where you generally hit the ball, you're going to try to think about it from a contact to damage ratio standpoint of, I'm going to try to hit the ball over the shift. And I'm going to try to hit the ball out of the ballpark, or at least to the gaps, trying to hit it to the wall. I mean, the Orioles kind of have a hitting philosophy at this point, organizationally speaking, not necessarily talking about the guys they have in the major leagues right now, which have to line up as placeholders. But, their kind of philosophy is they want their hitters to aim to hit the ball off the left center field wall. A line drive up in the air, though. That's kind of what you're looking at. It's not the idea of trying to hit it up the middle anymore. Why? Because, the second baseman's probably standing right there. So, it's just a really different game in that way. So I don't know what all the perfect solutions are. I do think the mound being moved back is something to explore, although I think you got to be very careful with that. I think that's something that would be a long-term grandfathered in kind of situation. I think that's why you're seeing it right now in the Atlantic League. You're not even seeing it in affiliated minor league baseball. It might be something that they eventually say, hey, we're going to work with college baseball and we're going to start that and we're going to grandfather it in over 5 or 6 years. In the meantime,
the mound back in '68 changed the game.
Yeah, I mean, that's been tweaked. Right. That's been tweaked multiple times over the history of Major League Baseball. Do I think you could look at something with the shift where you say, okay, you can shift, but all 4 infielders need to stay in the dirt? That's something that's been talked about. It's been talked about. You can shift, but you still must have two guys on the left side of second base and two guys on the right side of second base. So you can shift partially, but you can't have some of these extreme shifts where you'll have three, if not all four guys on one side of second base.
Well, the other night the ball got hit the shortstop, and it's like, oh, grounder to.
Oh, yeah, it's the third baseman, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's not a new
shortstop.
Yeah, I mean that's. I mean, we're going on 10 years. We've been seeing that now.
Put out
that's
6, put out 5.
Sure.
You don't even know where the hell the ball was.
Sure. So there are certainly things like that you can do. At the same time, this is where I do struggle because I am someone who likes analytics and likes to think about why things are done a certain way. And there's been so much intellectual evolution in the game. I mean, it really has been a revolution in that way. I mean, it started with Billy Beane, or even go back to Earl Weaver with on-base percentage, 40, 45 years ago. I mean, this was a long time ago that the sabermetric revolution began. It really was in the 80s, and Bill James and people of that nature.
Or my Stratomatic team back in 80s.
Right. But what the problem is, we have become so advanced in baseball. When I say we, I just mean the baseball community that really puts the thought into this and has advanced and has technology and uses the scientific method. The problem is it's become too smart for its own good, to the point where the game is not as aesthetically pleasing. So what is the solution to that?
When I said that 15 minutes ago, really pissed off at me. That's exactly what I said. The game is not as aesthetically pleasing, and the team's bad, and it's drifted, and it's
right.
All of these things. Now, when people do come back and they open their eyes again and they want to go, is it going to be fun, recognizable,
right.
engageable, and bringing me in? Because it's going to need to be relearned. And that's the
sure.
part that is very obvious to me 2 weeks into this, that my wife hasn't watched any baseball. She came home. She's like, hey, how are the Red Sox? I'm like, they're pretty good. She's like, I didn't know that. And I'm like, well, you're not watching. Nobody's watching. No, the Red Sox fans are watching either, apparently, according to Bob Ryan and Dan Shaughnessy at Baltimore Positive 2 weeks ago. And then she's going to be home now, and it's going to be on. And she's going to be watching it again, maybe trying to engage. And then it becomes, is it a soap opera I'm interested in? Not for you and me that have dedicated our lives to it, but
right.
for whoever the next group of people they're trying to attract that haven't never met a baseball or used to like a baseball. I think the real shame of it for me, and I've talked at length about this, is I am the exact guy they should be trying to get back and say, this new thing we're doing, guy on second, it's getting you home earlier, like getting me excited about it. Getting Ben McDonald to sell it to me as a good thing. I'm watching it and I'm not like, well, it's going to get me in bed earlier. I guess that's a good thing. If that's the only good thing, then why the hell do I have it on to begin with? If I'm waiting for the movie to end, if I'm waiting for the concert to end, and I'm rooting for it to end, was I excited to be here to begin with?
Well, and this is where I go back to not being about time of game. It's as much what happens within that. I think anyone has watched a long movie before, and after a while, you're looking at your watch. But I know there's been some movies, and I'm not someone who likes 3-hour movies whatsoever, but if you're talking about the Avengers, Endgame, and Infinity War, which were 3-hour movies, I wasn't looking at my watch at all. Why? Because I was dramatically entertained for 3 hours. And that's what it comes down to. NFL games have gotten longer. I mean, NFL games are 3 hours. And look, I get it. It's a once a week proposition as opposed to something that is nightly.
Baseball. You judge an NFL game by whether it's 2:25 or 3, like you do, because it's halftime and you're peeing and you're like, oh, it's only 2:15. Oh my God.
It's because it's compelling throughout.
Yeah, because there's 8 minutes left to go on the clock, and it's 23-16, and your punter got hurt, also, and you start to think about what happens in the game, and you look up, and it might be 4:10, it might be 3:50. I mean, the Ravens games have been really getting over quickly because they run the ball. So the last couple of years, we haven't had any like, oh man, it's midnight and they're still in the third quarter. Well, that hasn't happened here in a while.
But it's also, I mean, it's such an apples to oranges proposition. Every NFL game is very, very important. Baseball plays 162 games. It's the marathon as opposed to the sprint.
I would tell you, that's why watches an NBA game in the second quarter, like literally ever.
I mean, I do, but yeah. I mean, I get your general point. I mean, that's the other three sports. That's why that's part of why the NFL is king, because the inventory that they do have it's so specialized. It's once a week. It's an event, whereas baseball, it's there every night. The NBA, it's there every other night. Hockey, it's there every other night or every third night. It's something that is part of your routine on a daily or semi-daily basis, whereas the NFL, it's Sundays or that rare occasion that it's a Monday night or a Thursday night. So I don't know how you draw comparisons to that, but I do think there are things the game can do to make the action better within the game. But that said, I don't have all the answers. I don't pretend to have all the answers. I still think it's a great game in a lot of ways. I'm not as down on it as you are. And that's kind of where, the genesis of our disagreement comes from. But yeah, it can be made to be better. There's no question about that. At the same time, going back to what I was saying about the intellectual part of this, how do you balance wanting to make the game better aesthetically with not wanting to stifle intellectual development within the game? I mean, think about it. I mean, do we just want to arbitrarily say, no, you can't, we're not going to talk about spin rate, and I'm just throwing spin rate out there because it's a buzzword. I mean, spin rate and the idea of late life.
It's not intellectual, it's scientific, and whether the science creates a better product.
Right.
And,
but it's just, how do you rein that back though, without just saying, okay, well, we've collected data for 20 years telling us that this specific player or this type of player hits the ball in this direction X number of times out of whatever Y is, but nope, we're not going to let you play there regardless. So it kind of puts you in a position of, everyone feels stifled then. When I say everyone, a front office,
well, these aren't scouting reports now, they're science reports.
I mean, it's, but they go hand in hand. I mean, you want the eye, just like with the NFL draft. We'll be talking about the Liars Luncheon this week. And I mean, not that they're going to say anything of real interest in that, but that so much of what they do is based off the tape. But now with player tracking, it was 40 times and, bench reps and all that. But now with player tracking that so many of these colleges have, you have so much more data on player movement now, and you want to see how that meshes with the tape. It's the same thing with scouts and data analysts. You want to see how much of it meshes together. And, again, I struggle with the idea of just saying, we're not going to let you do that anymore. At the same time, I think, and, this is why it was interesting to see Theo Epstein leave the Cubs and join Major League Baseball as kind of a consultant with this very idea in mind of, how can we make the game better? How do you do that without completely stifling some of the developments and advances that we've seen that have been utterly remarkable? I mean, look at a guy like Jacob deGrom. I mean, when he first came in the league, look, he was a really good pitcher. Don't get me wrong, but you see some of the advances he's made, that he throws the ball harder and his stuff is better. It's more refined. I mean, you have guys that they teach themselves pitches in the off season now. I mean, it's utterly remarkable. I mean, before, when you did these things, it was done on feel, or you hoped you had a really good pitching coach who had a really good discerning eye. Now they have data to do those things. So, we get into growth mindset and Astro Ball and some of the things we talked about when Elias and Sigma Idell were hired and brought to Baltimore. But, there's so much of that. But at the same time, it's led to trends in the game that aren't necessarily the most entertaining. So how do you balance those two ideas of wanting to continue to be intellectually curious, scientifically curious, and to become more efficient and, win games and win championships? How do you balance that with wanting to keep a game that is a little more appealing from an eyeball standpoint? And one thing I disagree, as far as you made mention of baseball should be trying to get you. I'll tell you something. That's not true. Baseball wants to get kids. Baseball wants to get adults that are younger than me at this point, who have kids. And something we have not talked about through this entire conversation, and I'd be remiss, and we mentioned it in passing with Masson, baseball does a horrendous job. Forget about launch angle, forget about shifts, forget about strikeouts, walks, and home runs, and the 3 true outcomes, and 4-hour games, and not a lot of action, and the disappearance of hit and runs and sack bunts and all those different things. They make it too difficult for people to engage with their product. You can say what you want about the product not being as good as you'd like it to be, or things you'd like to see change. When you live in name someplace randomly in the Midwest or go a little bit further out west, and you try to subscribe to MLB TV, where you have a streaming package where you're supposed to be able to get all the games, but you end up having 6 different teams blacked out on that because, oh, you're considered part of their territory. That's a problem. When you have a situation where you want to cut the cord in your local market because cable or satellite is just not worth the squeeze for you, but you're perfectly willing to pay. No one's saying to put the games back on broadcast TV, although you could certainly do a little bit more of that. But someone who wants to stream, in most markets, you don't have many options. And that's a problem because I'm 37 years old. If I right now texted up 12 of my closest friends from high school, I guarantee you only a few of them have satellite or cable now. They're streaming, whether it's YouTube TV or Hulu or whatever it is. Baseball doesn't have a strong enough footprint in those types of services. Whether it's doing that.
I'm 52 and old, and I'm about to move, right? And we have Comcast Xfinity in the building I live in, right? So like I have what I have. And 15 years ago, my wife likes television a whole lot more than I do. Like she just does. I've lived alone for a month. She's been in Florida. I put the TV on only to watch an Oriole game, watch the news twice. I watch a lot of music on TV. I put concerts or whatever, but I'm not a television person maybe as much as I was during the last presidency, where like tuning in to figure out what a madman's going to do with our country. I don't think about that as much the last, let's say, 100 days. But we're putting our condo on the market. Moeller and Gary Realty. Jeff's going to sell our condo. It's all good. We've lived here. Beautiful view. Doesn't look like this every day, but it looks like this most days. And I'm thinking like we're going to move someplace where we're going to have a decision. And much like I've got a new computer and I've got an iPhone now, and it's technologically, you think these things through. As a 52-year-old guy, it's different than being a 37-year-old guy, right? I still see MTV and VH1. I remember the day it came to my neighborhood in Colgate in 1981. So getting rid of cable TV was something like, well, we'll have that the rest of our lives, just like we'd have a home phone that I have and I don't need anymore, right? Next place we go, I'm going to put like the elbow grease into like what I really want, how I want it. And the Oriole thing is a fascinating thing for what I do for a living, and having it on. They're on. I take it for granted. It's there. The bill comes. My wife pays it. I don't even think about cable TV so much. And then to think about like what I could or couldn't get, because my wife, is a Spotify person, and then there's like all of these different subscriptions that the iCloud wants me, and the Dropbox wants me, and the Google Docs wants me, and the Google Drive wants me, and what you're paying for, man. Baseball specifically should be very, very careful, because if I didn't do this for a living, I would say there's no way that I would even consider it. But now I have to consider it and say, all right, so we're going to move into a house over yonder way. We're going to move in, and we're going to have Wi-Fi. My wife works for Verizon. I'm sure we'll have Fios, right? So we'll do that. Now, what do we do with it? And what do we want? Do we need Bill Maher? Do we need HBO? Do we need Showtime? Do I need Food Network? What do I need? And a lot of people are going through that now for the first time in a long time, because they're moving, right? They're moving to a new place. What do I want to take with me? Give me my option. Like, I don't even really know if I move somewhere, how would I get my Oriole baseball if I didn't take cable? What would I do if I lived in Canada? I don't really know. So I'm asking you because you're young.
What are you talking about? Living in the market still, or going halfway across the country?
I'm going to live in Baltimore.
You need to have a cable or satellite subscription, or I think the one streaming option they give you would be, I think it's AT&T now. It's basically DirecTV / AT&T's streaming version.
But I would have to subscribe to that.
So Masson is part of that. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So there is no way for me and I learned this on opening day. I was at Hart Road, at the radio station doing some cleaning. I met Liberty Pure. I'm dealing with my plumbing out there because I own a business, And the game comes on. I realized, no cable in here or whatever. Wondering what sports bar I would get to, and I put it on the radio. I think I told you this on here. I put it on the radio and I listened to the two young people, Jeff Arnold. Who's the other fella?
Uh, would it have been Kevin Brown that day? I
Yeah,
think.
Kevin was on TV. Maybe it's the same. He does TV and radio, right?
Yeah, he does. Yeah, mostly
Kind of.
radio, but he does some
It was
TV.
Kevin and Jeff, right? So I'm
I
listening
think
to them.
Kevin's actually, I think, sneaky good. He's young. I think he's pretty good though. He actually on TV, he sounds a little bit like a young Joe Buck, which some people
He's
would say
sort of
isn't
rooting
good,
for
but
the Orioles a little more than I really
I mean,
wanted
yeah,
to. Yeah, like
sure.
that's
I
a
mean,
little
I hear you.
cheeseball to me. Like I'm
Well,
not used to that.
but you also get into some of the, I mean, and this, if you watch MLB Network, I mean, you hear the regional sports networks for other teams. I mean, lots of teams have announcers that are like that. I mean, some teams are a little bit more
For
so
as
than others, but
goofy as this old man has been here for 30 years and now effed up everything's been and throwing John Miller out, like
sure.
the the one thing that never really happened was that Gary Thorne put on a bird beak
Right.
and every pitch was a strike or a ball. But like I listened on opening day and there were 5 calls and he's going nuts and they were all, we're getting screwed calls. And I'm like, dude, it's opening day. I'm new to you. Don't go down that pathway because I'm going to make fun of you on the radio because that's what I'm going to do because that's what I do. But I would say this. So that day, I literally was listening in the car and I thought, well, this is nostalgic. I'm listening to my competitor, which I helped create, and they have the games, and it's 105.7, and it's all. I used to listen to Steve Rouse, so I listened for half an hour, and I don't know. I didn't pass any judgment on it other than it was opening day, and I was in the
Mm-hmm.
car. But I'm thinking, like, if I wanted it here, and I were a young whippersnapper, Nestor, who was 23 and loved me some Orioles and was going to be part of resurrecting the franchise, and I was engaged in it. What would I do with this device that I paid $1,400 for? And I pay all my stuff, and how could I give them money right now? How can I give them $3.95 to have this game right now, or give them $129 to have this season right now, and to have the the bronze package or the silver package or that whatever I would do? How could
Mm-hmm.
I get the game? And they really don't
I
have
mean,
that together, right? Like literally, like I hate for the pregnant pause, but like what you're telling me is in 2021 on opening day, I got pinched somewhere. The radio's all I had. So it really is 1958. That's the only
well,
option I had.
if you're talking in market, and this is where, again, this is as much a Major League Baseball issue as the Orioles. Now, the Orioles, this is the first year they've offered in-market streaming. So whether you're talking about Xfinity, whether you're talking about DirecTV, whatever it is, if you have a cable or satellite subscription now, they are still rolling out more providers for authentication logins. But like I have DirecTV, I can log into my phone or my computer now with my DirecTV, my email address and password for my account, and I can stream the Orioles.
I'll say something to you.
However,
this marks my place in life. I remember landing in Houston on a football Sunday with my wife before she had cancer. So it was 10 years. It was you can go look it up whenever it was. It was cold as hell in Houston. I remember this. And my wife booted her phone up on the bus in the Hobby Airport 10 years ago, popped
mm-hmm.
up her phone, and I had the ticket, I had the game, I had Red Zone maybe. I was watching games in the bus in the airport to the car. We got to the car. I plugged in. She put the phone up on the dash, and we were watching the Steelers. I literally remember this. And we're on the freeway in Houston watching football unencumbered on her Geo Storm or whatever the hell her first phone was. And I thought to myself, oh my God, I used to go over to Harvey, over at the
Mm-hmm.
Emerald Tavern and beg him to get me an Oiler game on a satellite dish. And my dad had a satellite dish. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, now it's 2021. I'm a lifelong Oriole fan. My name's Aparicio. I'm trapped at my sports radio station on opening day dealing with my water company. And I just want to watch the game. And I can't even give them money to do it. Like,
right. And that's the
insane.
problem.
That's insane.
But this is also the Orioles specifically with in-market streaming. Like if, me having DirecTV and having Masson on that until this year, I had no option that if I was away from my home, away from my satellite dish and television,
I had no, Luke. I paid.
Correct.
More, you know what I'm saying?
Correct.
Right?
Yeah. But here's the issue. That's still talking about isolated situations. I mean, if you're,
but why are they not giving me the game? What's the play?
Here's the problem, and this is the baseball-wide issue. you have to, they're still tying that into, you have to have satellite or cable. Now, there are some teams who have veered into, like, for example, I know the Phillies with NBC Sports Philadelphia, they offer that on YouTube TV. YouTube TV offers 70 channels. It's kind of the streaming, it's kind of the old guy streaming option. It's a streaming service, but it has 70 channels. It looks like cable, and in that way. So some teams are offering that. I mentioned Masson is offered on AT&T now. It's a little bit more of an expensive streaming service, but here's the problem. For, as I mentioned, so many people my age and younger, and many people my age have kids now who are old enough that are into sports. If you don't have cable or satellite and you're in market, you're out of luck. I mean, that's, unless you're one of those teams that offers it on YouTube TV. I think there's a few teams who have a contract with Hulu to show their game, but there is no a la carte option. And again, I'm not talking about putting the games on channel 2 like we did 35 years ago. There is
but
no
Zimmerman's pitching tonight, and I'll give him $4 to watch the game.
There's no option for that. No, there's no option for that. What is insane is to not offer something a la carte. And look, game by game, I mean, you could certainly talk about, the profitability with that, the practicality of that, but how in this day and age you don't have an option where, and MLB TV, if you've ever tried it, it's really cool. It's a great interface. It is, you get every game, but it blocks it. It's 100, 200. I can't. I mean, it's
okay.
I don't
but
pay,
you live in Shrewsbury.
I don't pay
it.
No, I don't buy it because
if you buy it, you wouldn't get the Orioles anyway.
I wouldn't. Yeah, you wouldn't get the Orioles, and you wouldn't get the Nationals on that. I don't know if the Phillies would be on there for where I live, but that's the issue. You could live. I actually have a friend who lives in Las Vegas, I think it is, and the number of teams that are blacked out on MLB TV is just. It's not just one. That's the problem. It's, you'll have sometimes people out in the Midwest, they'll have 7 teams that are blacked out. And guess what? They don't live any closer than 250 miles from any of those major league cities. So,
yeah.
So you just think about it. You have this opportunity to cast such a wide net, and you're deliberately restricting yourselves. Why? Because you're protecting the old business model of cable and satellite providers. So this is something, my brother-in-law, as you know, big Philadelphia fan, lives in Southern York County, Pennsylvania now, 2 hours west of Philly.
He's a big 70 nephew at this point.
I know, right? He's a big 70.
Nephew? Have we figured that out yet?
Don't know yet. They're waiting. Yeah.
Will we know ahead of time or no? No.
Nope. No one knows ahead of time. Nope.
And when's the baby coming?
So they will. End of next month, end of May, right around Memorial Day weekend's the due date.
I've been seeing the pictures. I'm like, getting here.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah. But he's a 76ers fan, doesn't get NBC Sports Philly on their local cable provider. Well, he gets NBA League Pass, and I'd be remiss if I said I knew for sure if you can do this in Philadelphia, but he can buy specifically an NBA League Pass of the 76ers games, and he can stream it. And every time the 76ers are on, he brings it up on his Fire Stick or Roku or whatever he has and watches the game. You have no option to do that a la carte if you're an Orioles fan or you're a Nationals fan, or frankly, in most major league markets where you might have one streaming service that you could subscribe to, you don't have an option to purchase your team's season a la carte. And I think for me, that baseball's got to they've got to address that. I mean, they have to address that. I mean, it's, at some point in time, more and more people are going to be saying, I can't justify paying $150 a month for this cable subscriber or this satellite subscription that out of the 120 channels I get, I watch 2 of them. I barely have the TV on most nights. But, as far as paying that much just to watch the Orioles or just to watch, NBA games or whatever it is, that I can't justify it anymore. So many more people are just going to say, look, I'd give you my money, Orioles. I'd give you my money, Yankees, or whichever major league team tickles your fancy.
Well, the Dodgers have been fighting this from the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, for the longest time, I mean, they, most of the people in LA for the last 5-6 years, I think it's finally kind of sort of remedied. but they went through a 5-6 year period where you couldn't even watch the Dodgers in LA. Like 85% of the city was blacked out. I mean, insane when you consider the providers. And I think they did a exclusive deal. I think it was with Time Warner or
Let
DirecTV,
Peter
whichever it
Angelos
was.
run your league, and this is what happens.
At least the Orioles didn't do something that bad. But I mean, it's just I have so many friends, and I've seen it. Whether you go to a message, Orioles Hangout or Twitter or wherever, I see so many Orioles fans saying, I want to give them money, but I am not subscribing for $150 cable bill per month just to watch the Orioles. I'd give them $200 for the season. I'd give them $250, maybe $300, but to pay $150 a month for that, that massive subscription to be baked in there, and this is cable TV. I mean,
well, and then
we know how that
6
works.
months of the year where they don't put anything on their network.
Correct.
In March to make. It's quite a scam. I mean, it really.
Well, I mean, that's so much of that's cable.
It's a con. It really is.
And I mean, that's cable and satellite in general at this point. And you're seeing RSNs. I mean, you're seeing RSNs now disappear from certain providers. I mean, it's a big issue. But baseball, considering their product, considering it's a 6 or 7 night a week proposition, you have to provide better access to your fans if you want this to remain financially healthy in the long term. The problem is they look at the bottom line right now. Right now, what they're doing is still very much financially viable, but from a long-term growth standpoint, that's where, if you're a baseball fan, and not even a fan, just looking at it objectively, you have to look at it and say, wow, you guys are really all about the bottom line in 2021, maybe 2022, but in terms of long-term growth, you guys are really missing the boat. And you're really missing the idea of cultivating baseball fans in the future. And that's why you look at the average age of Major League Baseball fans compared to the other sports, it's significantly older. In fact, I was just talking about that in the press box with another member of the local media last week. You look at the average baseball fan age, I think, is in the early 50s. That's not the case for the NBA and the NFL and some other niche sports. I mean, let's face it, everything other than the NFL has kind of become more of a niche, has kind of become a little more, it's fractured because there's so many viewing options. But if you want to remain one of the top ones in that regard, rather than falling back into the background, which, the NHL's kind of always been there to a degree, but now you have some other options, and certainly European soccer has become much more prevalent in terms of getting eyeballs here than it was 25 years ago.
But that news on Sunday night, huh?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not a soccer guy, but I have lots of friends who are into it.
Like, this is sort of like the Yankees and the Red Sox and the Dodgers getting together and saying, F the Padres and the Royals and the Pirates. We're just going to go have an 8-team league, and we're going to bring the Cardinals and the Cubs because we like them and they have money, and take one of the Texas teams and we're done with the rest of it.
Yeah. And look, I don't know, long term, I'd be totally, I don't know if that's going to be successful long term, but they're thinking in terms of growth. They're thinking from a long-term perspective there. And, baseball, I just like to see take more of a long-term view as far as all those issues within the game itself that we talk about and we'll continue to talk about. Yeah, they're there, but make your game accessible. I think we spend so much time just talking about, people talk about, not liking this about the game, not liking that about it. Still come back to the most simplistic reason to be upset is they make it very hard to engage with the product. I watched 2 Orioles spring training games on Masson. I watched 4 Orioles spring training games on AT&T Sports Pittsburgh or whatever it's called, just because of where I live.
Well, imagine
there's something wrong with that.
$1,800 cable bill, and the Orioles were like at the center part of like why you had it. So
yeah, I mean, it's
Luke,
just
we can get on and onto this. We're gonna have a Liars Luncheon this weekend. By the way, I want it noted that I named that. That was my that's mine. Now that everybody's calling it Liars Luncheon,
they even call it that now.
Offended by that. What's that?
I think they even refer to it as that. I mean,
Kevin was offended in the 90s when I called it the Liars Luncheon. Yeah. But it became it. I think Eric sort of formally adopted it, but I want it known. It was mine.
I mean, it is what it is. I mean, we'll get a couple little morsels. You'll have some people overreact to some stuff. I mean, they're not going to tell you what's funny is they might tell. Yeah, they might tell you something that's truthful, but you have no way of knowing whether it actually is because they don't want you to know that. I
I
mean,
always say to Eric, Eric and I used to get together and have a meal together, and I would get my sporting news and my Mel Kiper, and we would go through, and he would say, that guy's and I'd circle 30 or 40 names, but the one guy that I always give him was Marte Jenkins. You can go back and look up Marte Jenkins. He had me convinced that the Ravens were going to draft Marte Jenkins. So, and that was 20 years ago, and I never let him forget it. Luke Jones can be found, Baltimore Luke, with insights on the Orioles and baseball and football and the Ravens and the draft, all that stuff coming together. All of our wise conversations can be found at BaltimorePositive.com. And our friends at Planet Fitness, I want to give a shout out to my dude Teddy for United We Move. They retired United We Move because they want people back in the clubs now. So big shout out to Lynn, Victor, and all of our friends at Planet Fitness as well. I'm going to be bringing more props up onto the set. I got my El Guapo shirt here over in Catonsville. I've had my state fair going on, but it is springy, and I'm feeling very margarita-ish right now. That's why I'm wearing my green before my green screen. All of our sponsors are great. We're doing a crab cake tour. I'll be telling you more about that. We're going to have some crab cake diplomacy is what we're going to be working on the Eastern Shore at some point this summer, as well as with the mayor of Baltimore and many, many others. Our tour will start at Fadley's and at Costas in early May, and then we're going to go onward and upward, a crab cake a week. Make me a real Marylander. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore positive.